out there in MTD world. This is the Whole Priority Podcast. This is your host, John, and I'm with two co-hosts, Cole.
My name's Cole.
And Thomas.
Hello.
Just some background before we get started on this little podcast of ours. We have a group of semi to somewhat quarterly professional Magic players. Some of us a little bit more competitive than others, so that's alright. We have all sorts of players, and we play all sorts of formats, so we'll have a bunch of stuff for everyone.
I won an F&M once.
Oh yeah, that's a peak of his accomplishment.
Pretty good.
But we're going to have various guests, and we're going to talk about a whole bunch of different things, a variety of different formats, mainly modern. Modern's definitely the format of our groups that we like the best, and that actually is our main topic today. We're going to be talking about two sweet modern decks that are a little bit under the radar. I wouldn't say they're bad tier. You might argue a second one, maybe a tier 3-ish deck, but the first deck we talk about has definitely been in the public mind before. We've definitely seen this deck around.
It's a tier deck.
It's a tier deck. But first, we're gonna do a crack-a-pack. Now, Cole, you drafted this a couple times, right?
Once or twice, yeah.
You think it's? I was at the pre-release. I drafted this Kaladesh only a couple times. That's our pack, by the way. Thomas, have you played any Kaladesh Limited yet?
I've played a little Kaladesh Limited online.
Online, some NGO drafting. Fair enough. I like the format. I was actually listening to a video earlier today, and they were calling it like the successor to Innistrad block. It's like what Innistrad block or Shadows Innistrad should have been, and I kind of agree that Shadows. Actually, Eldritch Moon Shadows was decent, but I'd say Kaladesh so far. Triple Kaladesh is amazing. It's a lot of fun.
I like it a lot more than Moon Shadows.
I agree.
Triple Shadows is not that great, but wasn't that bad. So, we're going to start. First card is Tasseled Dominary or whatever.
Dromedary.
Dromedary. It's 1 white for an 0/4. Bad. And it's super not even like good in this format just because you want power, because your power for your creatures to accrue like various things. It's
no York Docs.
It's no York
Docs. It's definitely not Nyx Fleece Ram either, which is just a shame. They should just reprint that card.
Yeah. Actually, that format in so Yoked Ox, we'll put it up in the comments, but Yoked Ox used to be in Theros and was an 0/4, but then like in Journey to Nyx, they made a better one. They made a Logarn Trailblazer, an 0/4 with Heroic in the same block, so I just don't understand.
What spell are you targeting your 0/4 with, though? Are you Combat Trick, Titan Strength?
You gotta do something. Gotta get there. Aether Theorist is 1 colorless, 1 blue creature, and it's a rogue, and it has a really cool effect. When Aether Theorist enters the battlefield, you get 3 energy counters. You tap it, pay 1 energy, and you scry 1, and it's a 3/1. So
it's a 1/3.
1/3, sorry. It's not as good as Sizzle Starfish. Sizzle Starfish, you could scry every turn with it, and it was pretty much like a bomb. It was crazy. It was originally a common in Journey to Nyx, and then it moved into an uncommon at Magic Origins, which is correct because that card was busted. This one is pretty good.
I like it. I mean, especially because Kaladesh Limited is a lot slower than Innistrad Shadows over Innistrad was, and having slightly more controlling decks and being able to fix your draws even through a scry is super important. I mean, I wouldn't first pick this card by any means. I guess depending on the pack, but I definitely think this is a fine card.
It's also 3 energy too, which is a decent amount of energy too. Like
there's a lot of energy decks, and so you can get to use. It's kind of limited in the fact that on its face value, 3 scries, only 3 scries. But in the energy deck, you can do other stuff with it, and there's a lot of things you can do with energy in Kaladesh, so it's okay. Reckless Fire Weaver, 1 colorless and 1 red for a creature human artificer. And it's a 1/3 this time, and I am correct in saying that. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, Reckless Fireweaver deals 1 damage to each opponent. It's okay. It's probably, I think it's your 23rd I never really liked it just because you could trigger it maybe a couple of times, but there's so much better things you could do at the 2 slot.
Yeah.
It's not a bear. It's not a bear, and it's not and it's not an effect that you're going to get it to trigger regularly.
I think. Sorry.
Oh no, I don't think it's that good in limited.
Maybe in a red-white deck with the servo, like the servo generator.
Oh, yeah.
If you have the servo generator.
Servos make it a little bit better.
Yeah.
Inspiring Charge. This one's been reprinted a few times. It actually was in BFC, but Inspiring Charge is 2 colors in white instant. Creatures you control get +2/+1 until end of turn. So black, white, and a few other, mainly white. The absentee colors get a lot of Fabricate. And Fabricate is the ability that allows you to get either a +1/+1 counter on that creature or make 1/1 servo tokens. And so black-white like servos is a very good deck to be drafting, and this is like one of the finishers that you can play, and it's just like the most like painful thing because you think you're taking like 3, you take 9 off of 3 servos.
Yeah, I like this card a lot. Combat tricks are always very good, and as John said, having it in a deck where you're going to be generating a lot of servos, a lot of very small tokens, and just being able to pump them for an unexpected amount of damage is quite good.
It's good, but let me tell you though, don't pick this too early. It's something that's gonna circle around the table. If you're in the deck that wants it, you'll know.
You don't want to control that playing that card at all. That just sounds bad.
Kujar's Seed Sculptor, 1 colorless and 1 green, and it's a 1/2. But when Kujar's Seed Sculptor enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So this sort of effect has existed a lot in limited. There was in the original Innistrad block. There was Timber Watch Guide, I think it was, and that was pretty good. And then in Theros, there was a Satyr Grove Dancer in Journey to Nyx, and in the Cons block, Fate, there was Enoch something. I'll think of it later, but it allowed you to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature or like search up a basic land. It was part of a module cycle. This one's pretty good on its face. Like you could make it into a 2/3 for 2. That's okay. And there's a lot of like +1/+1 synergies. There's an uncommon called Armorcraft Judge, and it allows you to draw a card for each creature with a +1/+1 counter you control. So solid common. You would play it.
Seems fine.
Next card is Proc Cub Security. 3 colors, 1 black. It's a creature, Aetherborn, a warrior. Aetherborn's being new to this block, and it's a vanilla 3/4. It's actually vanilla 3/4s I found are worse than they would be in normal sets. There's a lot of synergy going on, and just having a 3/4 is something you don't want to be at.
I found the vanilla creatures were by far the worst in the little bit of limited that I've done. Yeah.
Ooh, this one's actually really good.
Yes.
Glint Sleeve Artisan, 2 colors and 1 white. Creature, Dwarf Artificer, and it has Fabricate 1, and it's a 2/2 on its face. So, like I said about the Fabricate, you make a 1/1 or put a +1/+1 counter on it. And this one, it's flexible. You can make a 3/3, you can make a 2/2, and for what it is, it's like a 3/3 for 3, which is solid. It's definitely a card that I like. Eager Construct is an artifact creature, one of the first ones he had. Is artifact creature construct is 2/2, and when it enters the battlefield, each creature or each player, not each creature, may scry 1. I think this is filler and is a little bit of trap. You don't really want to put it in your deck that often because what happens is they get the scry, they get the benefit off the scry first because they're the first one to really draw off the scry, unless you can draw a card on the same turn, but it's filler. I wouldn't like it unless you have some synergy with artifacts, which is possible. There's a lot of artifact synergies like our Reckless dude we had earlier, but I just don't like it.
He's very eager, I'll say that much. He or she. I don't know which one.
It's a robot.
I don't want to assume anyone's gender.
It actually is a reference to the Magic Origins one, Bonded Construct.
Really?
It was a common. Yeah, it looks very similar. You should, if you find one, you can see for yourself.
Okay.
Duhar P Foul. There's 4 colors. It's a 2/4, but if you pay a blue, it gains flying until end of turn. solid. It has to be in blue. If you're not in blue, don't take it.
I wouldn't play vanilla 2-4 for 4.
Ooh, this card, bad and limited, but is part of a sweet standard deck. Metal Spinner's Puzzle Knot. It's 2 colors, and when a Metal Spinner's Puzzle Knot enters the battlefield, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. And you can play 2 colors and a black, sacrifice it, and you do the same effect again. This is in the Teamer Colossus deck, or Colossus X deck, so there's a lot of different flavors of it. And it's a way to cycle through your deck, and while giving affinity for artifacts for your Colossus. In limited, not great. not good. Not good.
Yeah.
It just doesn't do anything.
It replaces
itself, and you can eventually get card advantage, but it's not where you particularly want to be.
Yeah, I agree.
Fretwork Colony, 1 colorless, 1 black, creature insect. Fretwork Colony can't block. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a +1/+1 counter on Fretwork Colony, and you lose 1 life. And it's a 1/1. Turns into 2/2, and then a 3/3. Ooh, this one's a little bit difficult. I haven't really got to draft the black-white deck that often, and I'm not quite sure. It's probably okay in the black-green deck, but the problem is it just can't block. And if you're ever behind with this card and you're losing a life, like, the situation is just going downhill really quickly.
Yeah, and it is a 2-drop, and, like, you can't expect all of your 2-drops to be great in the late game, but this one definitely is just, like, you rip this when you're hellbent, and it's just the worst feeling in the world, I'm sure.
Ooh, another energy card. This one's a very interesting one. Is Aether Torch Renegade. 2 colors, 1 red, and is a creature, human rogue. And when Aether Torch Renegade enters the battlefield, you get 4 energy, whopping 4 energy, and has 2 activated abilities. Pay 2 energy. Aether Torch Renegade deals 1 damage to a creature, so a pinger. And it has tap and pay 6 energy. I think that's 6. It might be 8. Sorry, that's 8 energy. I can't, like, how they format it is like energy. So that's maybe they come up with a cleaner solution than that.
It's like 4E. I don't know. 8E.
Yeah, something like that. Aether Torch Renegade deals 6 damage to target player, and it's a 1/2. So pingers are always solid and limited. The second ability is kind of gravy if you're an energy deck, but...
Well, you know what's the great thing about this card is?
It's a build your own lava axe.
It's the best burn spell in Standard.
The best burn spell in Standard has to be...
Incendiary Flow?
That's pretty good. I would say Harnessed Lightning right now, just because it
can't go face.
It can kill Smuggler's Copter at instant speed, which is the most important thing, because that thing... Before you can loot with it, kill it. Janet's Sentry. It's a 2 colors, 1 blue, another energy card. When it enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy. And you pay 2 energy. You may tap or untap artifact or creature. And it's a 2/3. So it's a tapper in limited. It actually, I like it. It's something that if you're in blue, that I would take it. The artifact thing doesn't come up that often. But
Tappers are so strong in limited.
Mm-hmm.
It's
it makes it a headache because you can attack and then give something pseudo vigilance on your team.
Right.
Or the threat of activation. The problem is, by itself, it only gives you one shot with it. But if you can build around it, it's definitely something that I look forward to using.
And I can see some situations, too, where you could play an instant that gives you energy, and then your opponent doesn't know that you'll have the ability to tap a creature. But then at that point, is the energy you're getting from the instant more worth it to use it on the tapper, or is it worth it to use it for the spell you're casting?
And that's the fun thing about the Kaladesh Limited, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Our rare... Toolcraft Exemplar.
This card's great.
1 white. It's a creature dwarf artificer. At the beginning of combat, on your turn, if you control an artifact, Toolcraft Exemplar gets +2/+1 until end of turn. If you control 3 or more creatures, it also gains First Strike until end of turn. So, for a lot of people, if you played Modern, you heard of this, but some of the more standard players, this is like Metalcraft. And Metalcraft used to be an old ability that if you had 3 or more artifacts, an extra effect would happen. And Toolcraft basically has this. It gets First Strike. But if you have an artifact, just one, it turns into a 3 a 3/2 for 1, and that's like a wild Mikado. That's really good. And we see in standard right now, red white vehicles has this, and there's some brewing in modern about this card. I'm not quite sure if the deck is there yet, but
That's the problem, is how artifact focused do you get, and why aren't you just playing Affinity instead? I think is a kind of a factor. Plus, there's so much artifact hate already in Modern that if you're not playing a deck that focuses on artifacts with the same power, that doesn't have the same power level as Affinity, it just feels like you're not going where you need to be. Personally, I don't know.
Well, at least in terms of an aggro deck.
Correct. That is true too.
I think I'm curious of Aether Revolt because there might be some tools because you got Inventor's Apprentice, aka Nerd Ape, which gets that was 1/2. It gets +1/+1 if you control an artifact.
Right.
The thing about True Cross Exemplar and those two together, those 8 are 8 1-drops that aren't like stopped by Stony Silence and can't be Ancient Grudge. I mean, the artifacts around them but can be Ancient Grudge, but like this is a way to beat some of the artifact hate. The common one being Stony Silence because it just hoses Affinity, and the deck we're going to be talking about later today, Stony Silence, probably not going to be that good
not
for a great thing to have in a forest. And Cerberus token.
Really pretty forest too. All
I
these
love these
basics are just so good.
We should have like
man.
4 full art basics. I don't know why they keep doing that. I mean, I understand that Zendikar was the OG sort of like do full art, but I feel like they should do more full arts.
I think I'm gonna getting foil ones of those for all my commander decks, just like different Kaladesh foils. They're so cheap and they're so pretty. But
Alright, we're gonna put that pack down. So this is the stuff we're talking about today. Is called Sweet Decks in Modern, and this is like our sort of going to be our series. Is we're gonna talk about some decks, some more popular than others, but we're basically doing a deck tech and like talking all about these decks because some of these decks are sweet and you should play them if you have the chance.
basically, so I'm gonna get the ball rolling here because I'm really excited. We're here to talk to you today. First of all, about Kiki Chord. We're gonna Kiki some chords today. So recently, there's been a kind of a kerfuffle in the Modern community. There's this whole kind of notion. I see a lot of it on Reddit where people are saying that Modern is no longer an interactive format. You kind of just have to play aggro decks and hope for the best and win the die roll. And you know there are counterpoints and different arguments to this topic. I'm not really going to delve into that. But Ryan Overturf did make an awesome article where he talks about how there are plenty of Modern decks that interact, and he even cited as an example of a good Modern deck that just interacts all the time as being Grixis Delver. And, you know, Grixis Delver is an awesome deck, but I don't play a lot of blue. So my Grixis Delver is definitely going to be Kiki Chord. Because Kiki Chord is a deck that is entirely about interacting with your opponent and hosing them in random ways, but then also just playing a solid mid-range strategy. So delve right into that.
For a lot of players that like were part of the Modern format a while back, there used to be an old card called Birthing Pod, and Birthing Pod was banned out of Modern, but this is the most I talked to some former Birthing Pod players, and this is the most like Birthing Pod Angel Pod in particular esque deck around, because it has a lot of the toolboxy aspects and it has a combo that we'll discuss later in the deck, but it's not the primary focus. You can really grind people out of the games, and you can have this nice little backup combo if you need it against some decks.
Yep, and on top of that too, if you're interested in the deck, I suggest looking up articles and videos by Jeff Hoagland too. He's been one of the people that's been the driving force behind the evolution of the deck, no pun intended. And his articles is like, as much as I disagree with him sometimes, and you know, a lot of people have controversial opinions about him, but he is very good at what he does, and he knows what he's talking about when it comes to this deck. So definitely check that out.
I actually I went to SCG Dallas, and I talked to him a little bit about the deck, and he signed my playmat, which is really nice. And you could also find the popular video. I might just put in the podcast description of a Deslarian Community College, and Jeff Hoagland did a collaborative video. So we have some things to talk about. So cool. Do you want to lead us off to the next thing?
Sure. So for those who don't know, Kiki Chord is a base Naya mid-range creature toolbox deck. I apologize. I don't know how to speak English. Based around the Kiki-Jiki and Restoration Angel combo. So for those who don't know, Kiki-Jiki is a 5-mana goblin, 2 and 3 red, for a 2/2. So the least aggressively costed goblin ever printed. But he's got this other secondary text that says, tap, put a creature token into play that's a copy of target non-legendary creature you control. It has haste and sacrifice it at end of turn. They also printed this great creature in a straw block called Restoration Angel.
Avacyn Restored.
Avacyn Restored, well, yeah. And 3/4 Angel with flying. When it enters the battlefield, exile target non-angel creature you control and return it to the battlefield under your control. So the whole deck kind of hinges around the strategy of you have the ability to combo off with those two cards. You make Infinite Angels with Kiki-Jiki and Resto. Restoration Angel also, not coincidentally, but also enables many of the strategies in the deck as well. Being able to blink creatures that have entered the battlefield abilities, being able to untap blockers when you need blockers, and so on and so forth. So you also have this other enabler called Court of Calling, which is three green mana and X for an instant. And it also has Convoke, and it reads, search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost X or less and put it onto the battlefield. Then shuffle your library. So basically this enables you to have stuff like 20-card sideboards, where 5 cards from your sideboard and your 20-card sideboard just happen to be in your deck. So in my situation, for my 5 sideboard cards, I'm playing 1 Scavenging Ooze, 1 Selfless Spirit, 1 Spellskite, 1 Revel Arc, and 1 Sin Collector, as just a means to hedge against certain decks in the format that you would not have an edge against pre-board, but then you can kind of focus again on post-board.
Yeah, and this is why it's the most like Birthing Pod S, and this is why we talk about this is the one that can interact with your opponents, because you can court up Spellskite against Affinity. You can court up Exalt against the Moguls player. You can do a lot of things with this deck and sort of interact on what deal with. And another thing I like to say about Restoration Angel, one of my favorite cards in the deck, it's a 3/4 flyer with flag. Like
sometimes you just win by hitting people with an angel.
That happens a lot. There's a lot of grinding you can do with this deck. So what we have right here on the table right now is my deck. My deck is there's the thing about Kiki Court actually is it's not stock. There's a lot of fine tuning you can do with it, a lot of variants, which we're going to talk about later. But this one is kind of straightforward. It's the most straightforward version of all. It's straight Naya. There's no splash. A lot of Kiki Chords will splash, and we'll talk a little bit later about some of the advantages, the disadvantages of splashing. But for me, I keep it straight Naya because it's the most like consistent mana base, and you don't have to take pain off of random Breeding Pool or Overgrown Tomb that you have in the deck to enable a splash. I'm actually quite glad, not that Thomas is talking a bit here, or not talking much. He's never really played something like this, so it's good to have someone around as an audience to sort of listen and be like if you can understand us. So Thomas, if you can't understand anything we're saying, or like it's not making any sense, you should just tell us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're sure of our baseline of people so much familiar in the format and whatnot. So for my Naya version, I have 9 fetches, 9 being 4 Windswept Heaths and 4 Wooded Foothills and 1 Arid Mesa. So the Naya fetches, the reason why we have 4 Windswept Heaths and 4 Wooded Foothills is because the green cards getting basic forest is very important, because it enables your turn 1 play, and it's a base, I would say, base green deck. There's some red cards in there.
You want almost every land you fetch to be a green source, if you can help it.
So, and then we'll have 4 basics, 1 basic plains, 2 basic forests, 1 mountain. There is some shocklands. Shocklands search out with the fetch lands, and you have 1 Sacred Foundry, 2 Stomping Grounds, and 1 Temple Garden, and these are lands. The reason why we have 2 Stomping Grounds is because Kiki-Jiki is 2 red. So it can be a little bit hard to get triple red sometimes, so that's why we have 2 Stomping Grounds.
And also, 1 Firelit Thicket, which I don't know if you're going to get to, and I just ruined. But
oh, no big deal. Mine's in Chinese, simplified Chinese actually, but Firelit Thicket is a Lorwyn filter land, and you could pay a hybrid red or green, and it basically filters red, green, or green. So you're paying 2 mana to filter 2 mana. It's very useful in that sense. It's definitely one of the lands I really want when you get the Kiki in your hand. It's kind of awkward to have it sometimes. I have also 2 Razor Verge tickets. These are fast lands. we had the enemy color fast lands actually in Kaladesh, but these ones are from Scars of Mirrodin. And Rage River ticket enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or fewer lands. And that's as white or a green. So a painless way to get off a turn 1 Bird of Paradise, which is one of our plays that we wanted to do, or turn 1 Path to Exile, which is one of the premier removal spells in the format.
You generally don't want to be pathing on turn 1, but sometimes you just gotta path. Sometimes it's better to just not take the 2 from that Goblin Guide.
Yeah, Goblin Guide is probably public enemy number 1 to pass, or something out of Affinity.
Yes.
And this is the sort of lands that you get to use if you're in straight Naya. 1 Horizon Canopy as tap, pay 1 life, add green or white to your mana pool, or tap 1 colorless. Play 1 colorless and tap it and sacrifice and draw a card. So if you get mana flooded, you can draw a card. It's actually kind of a draw engine because you can buy back Horizon Canopy with another creature we're going to talk about. So you can start drawing cards, and if you flood out, you can use it. It's kind of a painful land, but it does fix your mana, so it's pretty good. 1 Ghost Quarter, because you don't have to run something awkward like an Overgrown Tomb. You get to run a color source. A Ghost Quarter is just generally useful. You can snipe off a Binkoff Nexus. You can snipe Valakut the Molten Pinnacle. You can snipe off an Urza land. Those alls are pretty useful to have.
And sometimes it's just Strip Mine against the Suicide Zoo player, so, Strip Mine's a pretty good Magic card.
Strip Mine is a very good Magic card. Raging Ravine is also another one that the straight Naya uses. It's not as popular as was before. I know Cole has his deck with him, and he has a Raging Ravine in his deck too. Raging Ravine is a very good card because sometimes you just get grinded out, they answered all your threats, but you have Raging Ravine, and you can just beat down with Raging Ravine. In utility slots, I know some people also like to run, it's a Ghost Quarter, Gavany Township. I know Cole runs a Gavany Township. My problem with Gavany Township is I want the Ghost Quarter more towards like the Tron decks or big mana decks, because you kind of have a hard time dealing with that in the game 1, and Ghost Quarter helps you out just a little bit. And Gavany Township, while a very good card because it turns all of your creatures into huge threats, it can be mana intensive and a little bit clunky. That's my reasoning for it.
I agree with everything you just said, and I would say the only reason that I'm not playing Ghost Quarter is because I don't run into Tron very much. I've just been very lucky. I've played against it once, and he just didn't know the deck very well, and he kept bolting my face with the Ugin instead of exiling my stuff. So I still won, but if I played against Tron more, I definitely would play Ghost Quarter.
I played Abzan Company, and that matchup is like 90% to Tron, 10% in to Abzan, or to Abzan Company can win like 10% of the time, just because Ugin just straight swipes your board.
Well, and they don't care either if you gain infinite life, because they'll just go, okay, I'm going to Karn you every turn until we restart this game, and I have Ulamog underneath it or something.
So, the long creature spells, pretty simple. It's only 10. 3 Quarter Callings, 3 Pass, which is the most versatile white removal spell, and 4 a playset of Eldritch Evolutions. And this one is actually the most popular of the sort of Kiki Chord variants right now. It hasn't always been like that, and like I said, we'll discuss this later about variants, but Eldritch Evolution. As additional costs to cast Eldritch Evolution, sacrifice a creature. Search for your library for a creature card with converted mana cost X or less, where X is 2 plus the sacrifice creature's converted mana cost. Put that card onto the battlefield and then shuffle your library. So, and exile Eldritch Evolution. And it's 1 colorless, green, sorcery. This is like a one-shot birthing pod. And that's just why this deck is kind of like, a lot like Angel Pod, in the sense that you can get hate. And also, there's a lot of sweet plays you can do. Here's the card in the deck called Voice of Resurgence. And Voice of Resurgence is reads that when it dies. When it dies, getting sacked to Eldritch Evolution, you get a token. And there's another card called Pia and Kirnalar that makes 3 creatures by itself. So you have a 4/4 now elemental token. My elemental token right now, I think that people can appreciate this. My commentators can sort of like this. It's a Harambe, one of our local players at our LGS made this custom token, and I think it looks pretty neat. That I don't understand Harambe means, but I really don't. I might have students. I soon teach, and they just make all these references, and I just don't get it.
I just have my homemade voice token, so I'm a little jealous, but it is a very nicely made token. I've never seen anything like it.
So 23 lands, 10 non-creature spells, and then, oh boy, now this is going to be the part that when I'm writing down this deck list at a PPTQ, this is the part that takes me the longest. 27 creatures.
Yep.
And a lot of the 1-drops. So we're going to go through them. First, 4 Birds of Paradise. Birds of Paradise, it's a flying 1-drop, green 1-drop that adds 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. This is very good for enabling basically everything in your deck you want to get out fast. This is your mana accelerant, and the reason why you have this instead of 4 Noble Hierarchs is because you need red. You need red for PN Kirinar and Kiki Jiki. And sometimes your splash. Sometimes your splash is blue, sometimes your splash is black. So that's why we run 4 birds.
You can also painlessly activate Spellskite as well, which is
a nice little
hugely,
trick.
It's a big thing against decks like Burn.
But I still have 1 Noble Hierarch. This one's foil. I actually got it from a vendor. They ran out of Noble Hierarchs, and so when I was trading in some stuff, I'm like, can we just work something out here? And I actually got a pretty good price for it, so I'm happy about it. So that's our 1-drops, 4 1-mana accelerators. Then we go to our 2-drops. Our 2-drops being 3 Voice Resurgent. Sometimes you want 4. Most of the time, I guess you want 4, but I have 3 because I overload on 2-drops and utility slots. And Voice Resurgence is a Dragon Maze Mythic, and Dragon Maze is not a set that's not that very popular, but it has a really good card in it. So it's, like I said, it's 1 green, 1 white. It's a 2/2. It's just a bigger. But whenever an opponent casts a spell during your turn, or when Voice Resurgent dies, you put a green-white elemental token onto the battlefield with this creature's power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures you control. This thing could be insane. It can be a 6/6 or 6.
Which is why getting the PN Kirinar with the evolution is just, it's the biggest power play you can do. Just also because then your token becomes a 4/4 and it's at a bolt range as well, so you're just swinging it with that thing.
It also, this deck is kind of awkward sometimes, and a lot blue decks is going to be a problem for you because you play a lot of 4-drops. You play stuff like Chord, which is really mana intensive, and so they go to reman something. You're like, trigger, I get a token.
Yep.
So it helps with the blue matchup. The blue matchup can be rough. It's a grind. This deck can grind with every deck, but
this is exactly why I play 4 copies instead of the 3.
4.
I just want 1 every game. Mm-hmm. So
you have 2 to 3 Wall Omens. I choose to run just 2, and it's 1 white. Or 1 colorless, 1 white Defender, and when Wall Omens enters the battlefield, draw a card, and it is an 0/4 Defender. This is really good because you can flicker it with something like Restoration Angel, draw another card, and it also is just like a Defender because you're not the fastest deck. You're not Red Green Zoo. You're not Burn. You're gonna have to take some time, and this is a perfect way to just filter through your deck and sort of defend against early creatures. You can block Tarmogoyf at a 3/4, so that's nice. And not Grim Flare when it has Delirium, but if it doesn't have Delirium, then it can't trample over. I also have 1 Scavenging Ooze, which is 1 colorless, 1 green, and it has an activated ability: pay a green, exile target card from a graveyard. If it's a creature card, put a +1/+1 counter on Scavenging Ooze and gain 1 life, and it's a 2/2. This card grinds out games. It's something that you want, especially since they're going to try to take out all your creatures. You play Scavenging Ooze or you tutor it up, you can make a huge ooze.
Yeah, I was talking earlier about how a lot of 2-drops aren't amazing in the late game just because you want to play them on curve as a tempo game. This is one of the few 2-drops where you're happy to draw it late game because sometimes even early on in the game it doesn't even do anything. It's just a bear. So it does have a lot of utility in that sense as well.
This is actually one of the 2-drops I don't really like playing on turn 2 because I can immediately get bolted. But
and sometimes you can snipe out Snapcaster Mage targets. Yeah.
Targets, Snapcaster Mages, Lingering Souls,
Yep.
Flashbacks. So that's really nice to have. I have one Selfless Spirit in the main. This is a new card from Eldritch Moon. Selfless Spirit is 1 colorless, 1 white, flying. Sacrifice Selfless Spirit. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn, and it's a 2/1. So it's really nice because interacting with your opponent. Your opponent goes Supreme Verdict. You go in response. Chord for 2. Tap my creatures. Get Selfless Spirit. Sack Selfless Spirit. Creatures get indestructible.
Yep. This happened in a game before you showed up, and I made Thomas concede because he has main deck Damnation, and I also have main deck Selfless Spirit.
Ooh.
So this matched up kind of poorly.
And it's also, and I'm not gonna lie, it's a 2/1 flyer. Like, that comes up a bit. You could block Inkmoth Nexus, Blinkmoth Nexus, some random flyers, and you can beat down with it. It's just a nice card to have.
It's good with Gavany Township too as well.
We have 1 Korsali Pride Mage. This is what I cut for 1 voice. It's Korsali Pride Mage is a green and a white, just like voice. It's a 2/2, like voice, but it has 2 abilities. It has Exalted. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. This comes up a little bit, not that much. You can swarm, like you can beat down with a lot of creatures sometimes, but sometimes you just hit with just Resto, and Exalted makes it a 4/5 Resto, which is good. And it has an active ability of pay 1 colorless, sacrifice Korsali Pride Mage, destroy target artifact or enchantment. This comes up a lot. You want this against Affinity, you want this against Boogles, and some other random enchantments. A deck has some popularity right now is Red-Green Posnia, or should I say Red-Green Stone Rain. It's just Stone Raining you and trying to Blood Moon you, and you're sometimes a 4-color deck, and that's why I like being 3 colors, because Blood Moon, I can fight Blood Moon a lot easier.
You can even play Magus of the Moon in your sideboard, and that is some spicy tech that I'm thinking about trying.
It's disgusting. You could just chord for it, or just have it on the battlefield, and they just can't resolve that Blood Moon. Then we have 1 Wall Roots, 1 colorless, 1 green. I put it. Okay, so this one's an older card. It's from Mirage, so it's not like a card that like follows the normal New World Order, but it was reprinted in Time Spiral. It was time shifted. Summon Wall. Put an -0/-1 counter on Wall of Roots. Add a green mana to your mana pool. Play this ability as a mana source. Use this ability only once each turn, and it's an 0/5.
I've had more people stop to read this card, I think, than any other card in Modern, and I don't even think it's that uncommon, which is kind of strange, but it is definitely a little confusing at first glance.
It's a nice little mana accelerant that you can keep using. It can defend well. It's an 0/5, and also it's good with Quarter Calling, because Quarter Calling, as Cole discussed earlier, has Convoke, and so you can make a green, tap it, and make 2 green for Quarter Calling.
It's also worth noting that sometimes, unless you have a 3-drop in your hand, it's worth holding the Birds of Paradise until your second turn. That way they don't just bolt it with their turn 1 play. So what you can do is play a land, untap, play Wall of Roots, and then also make a green mana and cast your Birds of Paradise. That way you have 2 creatures in play, and you kind of accelerate yourself a little further. You're not far behind, especially if they were going to bolt your Birds of Paradise or something like that. Depends on the deck, but there are situations where you want to play the Wall first.
Now we get to our 3-drops. I only have 4 3-drops. 2 of them being Kitchen Finks. This is like one of the premier cards in Modern, probably one of the best cards in Modern. Kitchen Finks is 1 colorless hybrid green white. I see Thomas shaking his head. I think he has other opinions. I think it's something that maybe not like the best power level, but it's the best in like isn't a lot of decks. Like a lot of decks play.
The card's great.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, what do you have to say about it, Thomas? You see you over there.
I've died to Kitchen Finks more than I'd like to admit.
I played Burn, dude. I understand.
It's a lot of value. So it's a 3/2, and when it comes into play, you gain 2 life. And it also has another ability called Persist. And when this creature went in the graveyard from play and had no -1/-1 counters on it, return it to play with a -1/-1 counter on it. So on its face, it can attack and block, be a normal creature as a 3/2, die, come back as a 1/2, and gain you 2 more life. So the card basically can read sometimes like gain 4 life, which is really nice, and it's
kill 2 creatures out of the Burn or Zoo deck, depending on what they're attacking you with.
Summon a 3/2 and a 2/1, gain 4 life,
exactly.
3 mana.
I do have a story about Kitchen Finks. I did make I our friend Greg concede during the combat step of his turn while he was playing I can't remember if he was on Company or Little Zoo, but he was playing an aggressive Zoo deck, and I flashed in a Restoration Angel to unpersist my Kitchen Finks, which is something we should talk about, and block 2 more things. He loses all of his creatures, and I gain 4 life, and he conceded because of that. So there are some very, very strong things that you can do with this card.
It also is a great target for your Eldritch Evolution because the sack comes back, gain 2 life, and it can hit a whole bunch of your 5 drops. One of them being Kiki Jiki. And if you're being really cheeky with Kiki Jiki, you can just copy the Kitchen Finks, and you have another 3/2. You don't keep it; it exiles itself at the end step, but you gain another 2 life and have a easy. There's a lot of random things. I really like having Kitchen Finks. It's right there.
Yeah, one thing I was going to talk about too later, but I guess we can talk about it a little bit now. Is that's the reason why I like this stack against aggro matchups. You just don't care. Sometimes you gain so much life and play so many walls. It's just
you're bigger. You have a lot of walls, and you have a lot of incidental life gain. You're very good against the traditional aggro decks. We'll see a little bit harder, but that's why you have a sideboard.
Exactly.
And the other 2 3-drops are 2 Eternal Witnesses. So it's 1 colorless green 2/1. With Eternal Witness enters the battlefield, you may turn target card from your graveyard to your hand. So it's a regrowth. It's really good because you could copy it with Restoration Angel, and it's part of a chain, and it's a very slow chain, but what you do is you can chord for Eternal Witness. With Eternal Witness's trigger on the sack, when it enters the battlefield, you can target Chord of Calling as long as you hold priority. I had to do that, sorry. So you get back Chord of Calling, then you could chord, tap all your creatures, get Restoration Angel, target Eternal Witness, hold priority, target Chord of Calling. Next turn, or the next time you have the chance to tap all your creatures, chord again, chord for Kiki Jiki. Kiki Resto win the game. So, and this is kind of a slow process, but it's definitely something that comes up a bit. And sometimes your opponent just can't interact with that, and sometimes it's just value. Like, you get chord, have a 2/1 into play for attacking and blocking, and sort of grind them out of the game, and still have the chord in hand.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes you can also just sometimes you just have the Kiki Jiki in hand too, so you can or the Resto. Usually, Resto in hand and then Blink Eternal Witness is just like so good,
really good.
Even if you don't want to get the chord back, you can just get back a Fulminator Mage and keep blowing up their lands
or Path.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of things you get back. It's regrowth. There's it's not like anything like Snapcaster Mage.
The possibilities are infinite.
So here's some of the 4-drops, and some of the 2-drops that I like sacking to get these 4-drops are 2 Restoration Angels. We already discussed this Flash Flying 3/4. It does everything you want in this deck. It's a card that even without Kiki Jiki, you would just play it. Like it's good. It's really good.
Control decks play it as a finisher. I mean, it's just a Flash Flyer with a big body.
The other card is a relatively new card. Pia and Kirnalar, just rotated from Magic Origins. It's 2 colors, red, 2/2. But when Pia and Kirnalar enters the battlefield, put 2 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact tokens with flying onto the battlefield. It's red Lingering Souls for 1. That Thopters are really good to have. But it also has 2 colorless, 1 red, sacrifice an artifact. Pia and Kirnalar deals 2 damage to target creature or player. So you can fling an artifact at people. It's come up a lot. Some Kiki lists have been cutting 1 Pia and Kirnalar. I don't think they're necessarily wrong, but I like having 2 because it can block really well. It can block Ink Moths really well. It's really annoying. It's something they can't really deal with, and they can't Apostle's Blessing is a card that they like using in Affinity to give it protection, so they can try to attack in. But you just fling it at the creature then, and they can't have protection from red. So
yeah, it also very good against S Champion. So another thing to consider when you're playing it.
Well, Pia Kirnalar does the damage.
No, just as blockers.
As
just
a blocker,
so you can stay alive. Sometimes that's all you need when you're playing against.
Sure.
Yeah.
But red Lingering Souls, it's really Lingering Souls is a super powerful card. Those 1/1 flyers are very useful to have, and you just have a random 2/2 body, which is not That's not nothing. It's a random 2/2 body that can help convoke, attack, and block. Oh, it's disgusting with Gabney Township, which is why I understand the appeal of Gabney Township.
Yeah, no, that's why I play it. Traditionally, pre-board, you have, we'll talk about this later too, pretty bad matchup against spell-based combo like Storm. But Sunday, I was playing against Storm, and I just accelerated into Pina Kirnalar and then just activated Gabney Township and won that game very fast.
My last one, this one's not as common, but I like playing it. It's Lamvala, Keeper Secret. It's 2 and white. It's a legendary angel from Rise Eldrazi, flying. Activated abilities of creatures your opponents control can't be activated, and it's a 3/4. So, what I like it a lot, in our local meta, there's a lot of creature decks, and also in general, it's super good because it shuts off all these activated effects that we just talked about. Scavenging Ooze, Pien Kirnalar, Crystallic Primage. So if you're going against something like Abzan Company, all the Mana Dork's abilities shut off. It's really, really good against a lot of matchups. It's kind of...
Affinity?
Yeah, Affinity shuts off a lot of things like Arcbound Ravager and
Steel Overseer.
So it's, again, another flexible card that you sort of have, like Ryan Overturf said. So you just have it, and it's really good against certain matchups that you can just court for. And I just like it because it's really pretty, and it's also a 3/4 flyer that I can just beat down with.
See a recurring theme, 3/4 flying angels that you beat your opponent with.
Now we get to our 5-drops. Some of them being these are very good, and if you get these, like if you cleanly evolution, like it puts you so far ahead with basically every single one of these. So Kiki wins the game sometimes. There's a lot of shenanigans you can pull off with it. Like with our next card, Revelark.
Oh my god, Lark.
Revelark is 4 colorless, 1 white, a creature elemental. It's a flying, and Revelark enters or leaves the battlefield. Return up to 2 target creatures with power 2 or less from your graveyard, to the battlefield. And it also has another ability, Evoke, which is 5 colorless, 1 white. You may cast a spell for the evoke cost. If you do, sacrifice it when it enters the battlefield. And it's a 4/3 flyer, which is not nothing.
Another thing to note, we're talking about all these synergies. So, particularly Eternal Witness, if you can return an Eternal Witness with Revelark after it dies, you can use the Eternal Witness to return Revelark to your hand and you just drown people in value. Unless they have a way to get out of that kind of hole pretty quick, that's just going to add up. Another thing, too, is Restoration Angel, because you can kind of just do the same thing. Because
it's a lead the battlefield, it's not dying trigger. You could also get back your Pien Kirnalar, get more Lingering Souls, get more Thopters. You put people I put someone under the soft lock at a PVTQ where I had full Emitter Mage, which is in my sideboard.
Oh boy.
And with Revelark, and I just sort of killed all those non-basics, and he really couldn't do anything. If you have both Kiki and Revelark out, you can copy Revelark and get more value because, again, it's a lead the battlefield trigger. So even though the token exiles itself, you could still target things in the graveyard. So that's really valuable, and it's super hard to disrupt at that point because even if you play it out right and you don't activate it in an untimely manner, if they ever go to bolt either Revelark or say Kiki, just copy it, and say they try to remove Kiki, you activate it, Revelark copy, Kiki goes to the graveyard, Revelark token exiles itself, target Kiki, get it back. They did nothing, they wasted their bolt. So it's kind of, if you get that combo, it's very hard to lose at that point. Another thing that I have at the 5-drop slot is Dark Tusk. Dark Tusk is 4 colors, 1 green, and it's a 5/3, and it has 2 things written on it. When Dark Tusk enters the battlefield, you gain 5 life, and when it leaves the battlefield, you put a 3/3 beast creature token onto the battlefield.
The relevant wording here too is it leaves the battlefield, which we've talked about before, like with Revelark. So you can Restoration Angel, blink your Thragtusk.
That used to be an old standard deck. It is back in the M13.
Innistrad, Return to Ravnica. Yeah.
it's super good. Frag Tusk and Restoration Angel are like best friends. I've actually had my phone background once was a DeviantArt. Again, I'll put this in the show notes, but it's a DeviantArt picture of like Frag Tusk and like Restoration Angel playing Magic the Gathering on the table. It's really cool. I like it. They're best friends. This one is something that's the evolution target. It's actually Thomas's, because I was gonna buy it, but then he was like, "You could just borrow mine." But it's not worth that much. It's like $2. But it's a Inferno Titan. It's 4 colorless, red creature giant, 6/6 for 6, and it has fire breathing. So you can pay a red. It gets +1/+0 until end of turn. And when Inferno Titan enters the battlefield or attacks, it deals 3 damage divided as you choose among 1 or 2, 3 target creatures or players. Woo. This does like. It just kills a bunch of things. You could do bolt your face or kill 3 Lingering Souls tokens.
Also worth noting, it's an incredibly good top deck. Something that I'm going to talk about in a little bit when talking about the weaknesses of the deck is sometimes you just draw into Wall of Omens and Wall of Roots, and the deck doesn't do anything. Late game, if you just like draw into Inferno Titan, you can probably cast it, and you could probably just start ending the game with the 1 Inferno Titan. So it's worth noting.
And since you have 2 Somber Grounds, Firelit Thicket, and other ways, you can make a lot of red. So if they don't block this, they're taking 10.
Exactly. Yeah.
10 plus 3 off the bolting them in the face. Like, again, this ends games. So that's the 60 cards. That took a little bit, but
I'm going to go through mine quickly, so it's fine.
We're going to go through some of the sideboard cards. Sideboard is a lot, like, so many people put so many cards in their sideboard because you could put literally almost anything. But what I have right now, what's missing is 2 engineered explosives, which is just
I have mine. I can read it.
But it has
It has Sunburst.
Sunburst. It's an X. Is it artifact with X with Sunburst. When it enters the battlefield with charge counters on it for each colored mana spent to cast it, you can pay 2 colors, sacrifice engineered explosives, destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost equal to the number of charge counters on engineered explosives. This is a deck that you could legitimately put it on all 5. Like, yep. You put it on, if you have birds out, you can put it on 5. Mostly you're going to put it on 1 or 2. This is something that really good against Affinity matchup, against Infect, Suicide Zoo. Basically everything in Suicide Zoo is 1 casting cost.
Kind of fringe use too, but you can also put it on 3 because sometimes the deck kind of has a hard time interacting with the Planeswalkers, other than just like flying over and hitting them. But you can put it on 3 and just like blow up a Liliana of the Veil, or Liliana of the Last Hope, or some other 3-drop Planeswalker I'm not thinking of.
I have 1 Aven Mind Sensor, which is 2 colorless. 1, I should say generic. Whatever. 1 white. Sorry, this future site border is 1.
I don't even know what the card says. It's like it's in Chinese.
It's 3 mana. Oh, so Aven Mind Sensor. It's 2 generic mana and a white for a 2/1 flying bird wizard creature. It has flash, and it has players can only whenever a player would search their library. Instead, they can only search the top 4 cards.
It sounds like you've had a lot of experience with this card.
It's your opponents, not you. It doesn't strip you, but it's super good against a lot of combo decks. A lot of combos have to search for their combo. I think you get someone with Scape Shift, like they were not trying to get off the Scape Shift. You flash an Aven Mind Sensor, and when they're trying to search for all their lands, they can only search the top 4.
It wasn't me, but it is something that I would imagine doing. So we can say that I did it.
Super good,
yeah.
And it's.
You can also knock people down a mana source if you flash it in response to them fetching.
Yes.
It's a really disgusting card. Future Sight is a good set. It
was good for the future of Magic.
2 Lightning Helixes. It's 1 red, 1 white, instant. Deals 3 damage to target creature or player. You gain 3 life. So it's like really good against the burn, other aggressive matchups. It's something that's a nice little hedge on. It's a good matchup overall, but you just want to have cards. In general, you want to have cards in your sideboard. It helps out even the good matchups.
It's also just cheap removal as well. Like even if you don't want it just for the aggressive matchups, sometimes you just want to kill some creatures.
I have 1 Celestial Purge, 1 white, one colorless, one white instant. Remove target black or white permanent from play. So
Black or red.
Black or red, and it's exile. It is eroded to be exile, and is a good. Kills Liliana, kills Blood Moon, super good. One Fulminator Mage. It is one colorless, black red creature, elemental shaman. Sacrifice Fulminator Mage. Destroy target non-basic land. 2/2. That doesn't come up much, but basically to hose some of the big mana decks, you have problems against it.
We were also talking about this on Facebook a little bit. I joined in a little bit, but I don't have a ton of the experience. I also just like bringing it in against Jund. Or I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe that's just me, but
there are a lot of decks in Modern that try to take advantage of 3+ color combinations, or are big mana decks like Tron, and having a Fulminator Mage just it just sets them back a mana. It's not like Ghost Quarter; they can't search for a land.
Right.
Literally, you just destroy non-basic land, so ruins fixing.
You can do whatever you want to. So and they never want to waste a bolt on that thing because you can just sack it in response. So if they don't have any creatures, you can just hit them for 2 every turn. I've done that a lot. So
the fourth path. Loaming Shaman. This is most of the time. This is most of the time for me is a second scavenging use because it can grind really well. But I'm testing this out. So Roaming Shaman is 2 colors, 1 green. It's a 3/2 creature. Centaur Shaman. When a Roaming Shaman enters the battlefield, target player shuffles a number of his target cards from his or her graveyard into his or her library. So if something like Dredge put a bunch of cards in their graveyard, you just shuffle back in. You basically triple time walk them because they have to go through all that process of putting all the cards back in their graveyard.
I imagine it's even fine against something like Grixis where they're trying to delve for creatures all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And also good against Jund right now because a lot of Jund lists are running Grimflare, and you can turn off Delirium and make their Goyf super small.
Yeah.
Eidolon of Rhetoric. It's an enchantment creature, spirit, 1/4. Eidolon of Rhetoric has each player can't cast more than 1 spell each turn as a 1/4. 2 relevant things about this. 1/4, can't bolt it.
Yep.
Second thing, hoses a lot of combo decks.
Also, strangely, really good against burn. Not strangely, but not typically something you'd think of right off the bat. But a lot of times burn decks just want to win by playing 3 1-drops in one turn. So
Ad Nauseam, Storm,
Yep.
just hoses it.
Crystal Brand.
Thrun, the last troll. 2 colors, green, legendary creature, Troll Shaman. Thrun, the last troll, can't be countered. It can't be the target of abilities or spells your opponent controls. Hexproof. 1 generic and 1 green regenerate Thrun, and it's a 4/4. A house against control decks, against Jund, the black green decks. You just play it, and they just can't get rid of it. It's almost impossible because even if they have something like a sack effect, which is the one way you can get rid of it, you just gotta have a random bird most of the time. Like you're just sacking a random bird or wall to it, and it's just something that's really hard against control decks to deal with. I had the Spellskite actually in my sideboard, and Spellskite is something that's very popular. Spellskite is 2 colorless artifact creature horror. 1 and is an 0/4 with Phyrexian mana. Change target spell or ability to Spellskite. So, or you could pay Phyrexian mana, which is paid with either 2 life, or you could pay it with blue. So even if you don't have blue, which is mine, straight and I can't ever pay blue except for bird, which is something nice we talked about. Or Hierarch, actually. Thank you. So it's something that's really good against a lot of linear decks that try to pump. Become immense. The Eternal Bane in the format, not the Eternal Bane, just came out recently.
The thing that people like to complain about most right now.
I think it's something that has to be on the watch list to be banned. It just does some degenerate things, and I'm a person who does degenerate things. I play in X, so I know, and
that's a good qualification to make.
It's something.
I love degenerate things, but this might be a little too degenerate.
It's just a little bit too much, but still, it's nice to have.
But yeah, Spellskite just because as long as Spellskite's a legal target, you can start redirecting to it. It just as a single 2 mana 0/4, it protects most of your board. If they're going to remove a creature, you can redirect the Spellskite if it's an integral piece to your combo, such as like Kiki Jiki or Resto Angel or something. Or if they're trying to pump, as John and Cole said, you can redirect the pump spell to Spellskite. Or even in Affinity, it shuts down their Arcbound Ravagers mostly because the modular trigger is target creature, so you can redirect the modular from Arcbound Ravager to Spellskite.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't even know you could do that. That's super awesome.
Because
it shuts down Spellskite.
It says
It shuts
artifacts.
down Arcbound.
Also, I put someone under made my creatures basically close to invincible because with Kiki Jiki and Spellskite, you can copy Spellskite and then you can choose the new Spellskite, the token copy. You still get the Spellskite. It's the original Spellskite, so that's just really annoying to deal with.
We're not cheating here. This is something that you can do.
Malira, stuff like Outcast, the sort of Infect Hoser. It just hoses them. You can cord for it. Very nice interaction to have. Kataki's War's Wage, one colorless, one white. It's a legendary spirit that's 2/1. All artifacts have, at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice this artifact unless you pay 1 colorless.
Boy, I wonder what deck we're trying to play this against.
It randomly comes up against a lot of other decks too.
Tron, yeah.
But it's the reason why we're running this is a Stony Silence. Sometimes you can run Stony Silence. Some people like Stony Silence over this, but I like it. Court for it. Or Evolution for it.
My issue with this is against mid-range matchups, I play this too, don't get me wrong, but Affinity will bring in Pure per Aether Grid, and unfortunately Kataki has 1 toughness, so what I've done is confidently cord for my Kataki, and then have my opponent just go, okay, end of your turn, shoot it for 1, and then I cry. And this is why I cry.
So, and my last card I have in my sideboard is Obstinate Baloth. It's a 2 colorless green. It's a 4/4, and when it enters the battlefield, you gain 4 life. And if a spell or ability your opponent's control causes you to discard Obstinate Baloth, put it into the battlefield instead of putting it into your graveyard. So your opponent would never choose this with Thoughtseize. Why is this in here? Because Liliana +1, each player discards a card. You could just do it, and you have a 4/4 that can threaten Liliana, and you gain life.
It's also just good against burn too sometimes, because if you're playing a Mandork and they don't bolt it, then you're having to turn 3 Obstinate Baloth, and it feels so good.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is we have Cole's deck, because Cole and I both play this deck, and that's why we're kind of doing most of the talking a little bit about variants and splashes with Kiki Cord. So take it away, Cole.
Okay, so recently they made Eldritch Evolution, which we talked about, and I personally am not a big fan of the card. I'm actually thinking recently about trying it out, but I do remember our local meta used to be very, very blue, and in particular, the evolution is kind of
bad against Remand.
Very bad against Remand in particular. Sack my creature, I get no value. You remand me and draw a card. It's just like super, super time warp.
Also Spell Queller, from Eldritch Moon.
That as well. So
I haven't actually had that happen to me yet.
I'm playing a straight Kiki Cord with the Black Splash because I love black cards. I'm not playing the Nahiri version, which we haven't really talked about.
Which we'll to get into.
Okay, just because I don't own them. But if I owned them, I would play that version. So I figured, just to save time, the thing that we can talk about more is my differences between me and his deck. Basically, for my flex lands, I'm not running a Firelit Thicket, and I'm not running a Ghost Quarter. I have to play 1 Overgrown Tomb to facilitate my black mana, which is usually not a problem. If you have 1 land and a bird in hand, you don't usually want to keep that hand. But if you have an Overgrown Tomb, you can still keep it and then be okay.
It's a bad forest, basically.
Right. It's a forest that makes you lose 2 life in most situations. I'm also playing Gavening Township for all the reasons that we've highlighted earlier, so I won't go too much in depth with that. And then for my last flex land, I'm also playing Raging Ravine. So I just like it as an attacker. I played against I played against 8-Rack in a game a couple weeks ago, and they lilied and made me discard every card in my hand. But then I just had the mana to attack with Raging Ravine, and I won just because I just beat him down with Raging Ravine for a few turns. So it's pretty good.
It's a 3/3 that turns into a 4/4 because it gets a +1/+1 counter on
right.
it, and then
Whenever
each turn attacks. and it comes a 5/5. This is something that comes up because you have a lot of mana. You can produce a lot of mana in the deck. You can activate it twice, and it will put 2 +1/+1 counters.
Right. I've never done that, but I can't wait for the day that I do.
So the Black Splash brings some nice cards.
Yep. Primarily, it brings Orzhov Pontiff, which I'm not playing, so we'll just pretend that I'm playing it. But basically, it's a mini sweeper. It gives your opponent's creatures -1/-1, and then it has Haunt.
With the most confusing mechanic,
Yes.
when something that won't come back.
You could also give your own creatures
Just
+1/+1.
Oh, that's
Comes
right.
up a lot.
Well, I didn't even see.
That comes up a lot. I played the Black Splash for a while. I didn't like it. That's why I'm playing straight Naya.
Okay. The other black card that I'm playing is Sin Collector, which is 1 white-black for a creature, human cleric. When Sin Collector enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose an instant or sorcery from it and exile that card. So I really like the card Thoughtseize, but Thoughtseize is really bad in this deck, so I'm playing a bad Thoughtseize. And that's about it, really.
You would court for it, though.
Yes, no, you can code for it. My favorite thing is cording for it during someone's draw step, and then also having a resto, so you resto someone on their next draw step. Just combo and control players, it's a little aggravating to play against this card, which is why I enjoy it.
You can also play something like Siege Rhino, something that's if you're on the value plan, it's just a 4/5 with trample that's lightning helix them. You can play something like Inoffense of the Foremost, something that doubles up on dredge and anti-graveyard hate, and also is a 4/4 beater that can put +1/+1 counters. So black gives you a lot. It filtrates a lot of things. You can also have something like Slaughter Games in your sideboard. It's an uncountable way to just name ad nauseum or. Actually, we had Thomas here. What should you name with Slaughter Games if you are a player?
Can I make a guess? Because I've never done this before.
Yeah.
Do you name Ad Nauseum?
Ad Nauseum's a good name. It definitely getting Slaughter Games naming Ad Nauseum while playing Ad Nauseum really sucks. It's not the end all be all because in most lists run a really janky Mirrodin rare called Spoils of the Vault, which gives you an out for a really unpopular alternate win condition. But yeah, you name Ad Nauseum and it makes the Ad Nauseum player cry.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. The deck is called Ad Nauseum, so I'm assuming you don't name like Angel's Grace. I know you don't name that. So
You don't name Angel's Grace.
So the other splash you can do. Well, the only other one, we only have 5 colors of mana. The blue splash.
What are you talking about? You put Splash for Thought Knots here.
The blue
Obviously.
splash has it gives you counter spells, which is really nice. One of them being on a stick, being Glenda Era Archmage. I played the blue splash. I really like the blue splash. Right now, I'm not playing it, but the blue splash, Glenda Era is a 2/2 flyer for 4 with a blue, and it has pay a blue. Counter non-creature spell with persist, so it can be double negate on a creature. You can Kiki Chiki for it. You can Kiki copy counter. You can Revel Arc it back. So it's really powerful. It's a soft lock against a lot of decks that play non-creature spells. There's negates. I think there's some sort of emergency going on, but that's okay. We'll continue with the podcast. We have.
I thought I was going to die. I'm sorry.
Is it Staticaster? Staticaster is so strong because it's something that it's a flash, colorless red green,
Blue.
Red blue. Sorry, 03
With haste.
with haste, yeah. And you can ping a creature, and it pings all of their target creatures with the same name. Very good against affinity, against tokens, against infect. Just start pinging away.
Yep. I also think I've been thinking this recently. I think the blue splash is also better if you're playing with Nahiri as well, because
That's why I played it.
Right, Glen Alendra just protects Nahiri so well. She normally doesn't need a ton of protection, but at the same time, just like the soft lock of having like I'm gonna Nahiri every turn. And then I'm also just going to leave up a blue and sack this whenever I need. It's just so good.
So, yeah. It has a lot of... That's why I played Nahiri. I played Nahiri Blue. And Nahiri is another way you can... Another variant. It used to be more popular, but it's fallen out of favor recently. But it's very interesting. So Nahiri is 2 colorless, 1 red, 1 white, planeswalker. It has... Sorry, I'm bringing up the Oracle text because I don't want to be completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, +2, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. It has -2. You may exile target tapped creature, tapped artifact, or enchantment. And -8. Search your deck for a creature card and put it onto the battlefield. It has haste. At the end of the turn, return that creature to your hand, and it enters the battlefield with 4 loyalty.
You can also search up for an artifact with that ult, but you probably don't need to do that in this deck. So super good because it could go up to 6 loyalty, and that's super hard to deal with, or just exile something, just blow it up. Another card I played with in the blue Kiki core deck is an old card, used to be part of a very popular modern deck, Splinter Twin, but it's called Deceiver Exart. It's a 1/4 with flash, and you can tap down a permanent like a land. So it's a nice little utility to have, so you can like tap down the land at your opponent's upkeep. You could sometimes, I didn't actually pull this off yet, but you can win on turn 4, theoretically, because you can tap something down with Deceiver Exart, untap, Kiki if you have a bird out or some sort of mana accelerant. But that's not the point of it. Why I had Deceiver Exart. The point of Deceiver Exart is you can tap something down like Hate, which we're going to talk about later, like Grafdigger's Cage, tap down the Grafdigger's Cage, play Nahiri, destroy the Graft Cage. Very good.
You can also, if they're holding up Bolt to stop the combo, you can tap their mountain to get rid of the Bolt and then play your Kiki if you have the mana, and then that way they just have no outs.
I also played Reflector Mage too. That's another card that I play over Deceiver Exart sometimes. Reflector Mage, super good. So Nahiri, she can search up your second half of the Kiki combo. So you can have Kiki Restoration Angel, so you can search that up. Or she can search up one card called Emrakul, the Promised... Or sorry, not the Promised End. That's the wrong one. Aeon's Torn. I should know, because I played this deck, but sometimes I confuse myself. It's a 15 mana, 15/15. Emrakul, Aeon's Torn can't be countered, and when you cast Emrakul, take an extra turn after this one. That doesn't come up, you're not casting this. But it has flying, protection for colored spells, Annihilator 6, which is whenever it attacks your target opponent, you're attacking must sack 6 permanents, and when Emrakul is put in the graveyard from anywhere, the opponent shuffles his or her graveyard into her library. So you can search this up with Nahiri and just basically just win the game.
Also really increases the odds on your mill matchup, and it's really important in this format.
It's actually kind of awkward sometimes. Like, sometimes you want to discard, like, the Emrakul, because it's rots in your hand. It does literally nothing.
You can't do anything with it otherwise.
But it shuffles everything back in, so I had some awkward times where I had Eternal Witness in my hand, and I was like, oh, I can't really target anything. I just shuffled everything back in.
Yep.
Or sometimes they play Rest in Peace. Rest in Peace is another good hate card, semi-hate card against Kiki Cord, and you can never discard your Emrakul, and so it just wastes away in your hand. I only had one time ever that I didn't kill someone with Emrakul Aeon's Torn. There's a local player at LTS named Josh, and he plays Thopters. And he had enough Thopters to survive a 15/15 Annihilator 6. And it actually was a 16/16 because I played Gavany Township at the time. Activate Gavany Township, made 16/16, and he still didn't kill him. That was a very embarrassing moment in my career, but it happens.
Oops.
So the Nahiri version. So what I would say about this deck is... It is Cole has some notes that he'll go over, but what I'll say, there's something that come up in the Jeff Hoogland article. It's a bad control deck, it's a bad aggro deck, it's a bad combo deck, but it does all these roles, and it can be flexible and can change to any of these sort of roles on the fly, and you can interact with your opponent and change your plan mid game. At some decks this can't do, like Burn, you have to burn them out. There's no control really, except for... Okay, I lied. You can have some control against something like Infect, when you can try targeting their small creatures, but for the most of the time, or elves, you have to try to control their creatures. But for the most part, Kiki Cord is very flexible in that sense.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of reasons why people should play Kiki Cord, because it's the best deck in Modern. But
before you go, I want to say, Thomas, after hearing this, give your opinion. If you would pick this deck up, if we give you unlimited money, would you play this deck? So you have to listen. You can be on your phone, but you should listen.
I mean,
you have to listen. You have to listen to our strengths and weaknesses first before you.
Okay,
yes,
of course.
Yeah. You're the unbiased source we got here.
Because we play the deck, so
yeah. So first and foremost, it rewards knowing the format and your meta, because you can tailor your sideboard and your main deck to beat certain strategies. As long as you know what you're up against, it just feels unbeatable sometimes. Because you're playing Infect, I'll just grab a Spellskite. I don't care about your thing. You're playing Dredge, I'm gonna grab Scavenging Ooze and just like take your good things out of your graveyard. You can also switch gears depending on your matchup or game state. I've also played the control deck, sort of what we were talking about a second ago, against like something like goblins. I've had opening hands that are just like 3 removal spells, a wall, and lands, and it's just like, I guess I'm just Kite control now, which is fine, but
we should find some guests for goblins, because goblins is a deck that is so ferocious sometimes.
It's a cool deck too. It's incredibly fun. I know that's really subjective, but I lose with this deck a lot because it's difficult, which I'm about to talk about in a second. But every time I lose, I feel like I've learned something. Except for Valakut. I didn't learn anything when I was playing against Valakut, which is also something that I'm going to get to. Also, it just plays another subjective thing. But you also can just play cool cards. Cards that you just enjoy to play, which is kind of why people play Modern anyway. But you can play things like Revelark, Grim Lavamancer, Reflector Mage, we just talked about, Domri Raid, which I play in my sideboard. You just can play so many cool cards that you just like to play and still have it be viable, which is part of why I enjoy it. But the deck's not without its weaknesses. I feel like I'm reading a eulogy at a funeral. It's very, very soft to fast combo. As I kind of alluded to earlier, you just don't have the options main board besides racing, and you're not a good deck to race with because your combo is so slow. Ad Nauseam is probably one of your worst matchups pre-board just because you don't have any way to interact with them.
You just sort of have to race for your combo, and sometimes your hand just doesn't do that.
Same thing with Valakut. You have nothing. You
have the combo. That's not it.
And even then, just like they just do it faster than you. You get some really awkward draws too. Sometimes you draw your opening hand and you have Pia Carnalar, Revelark.
5 drops.
Yeah, a lot of 5 drops, and you feel like you're playing a bad commander deck, and it's the worst feeling. You also have a very greedy mana base. I've only played against the Ponza deck once. I've played against another land destruction deck, and if you don't have a mana dork in play, it's the worst. You can't cast anything. Your utility lands like Ghost Court and Gavity Township don't make any colored mana either, so you can get awkward hands that don't make the mana that you need turn 1 and 2. And there are also versions that play spells that have triple red, triple green, and triple white in their mana cost. So if you don't have any kind of accelerants to get that out there, not only are you going to be taking a lot of damage, which hurts your aggro matchup, but it's just tough. If you want those lands to come in tapped, you're going to be behind on tempo all game, and it's almost not worth it sometimes, but that's just the way the deck is.
Yeah, that's why I played the straight Naya version, and that's why, we did it because I'm sort of the host, but we deck tagged that straight Naya version. The Naya version doesn't have that much. It's still a 3-color deck, don't get me wrong, but it fights against Blood Moon decks a little bit better than if you had a Splash, because sometimes you do have that bad Forest in your hand, Breeding Pool, or Overgrown Tomb, and sometimes you don't. And I also have main board Kasali Pride Mage and Celestial Purge. I have Blood Moon in my mind when I'm playing with Kiki Cord.
Yeah.
This is what I want to say about this deck too. It is actually, I will say, this deck, if you're getting into the Modern format, it's actually fairly affordable. It's a good place to start because, not my version. My version's a little bit more pimped out. I have like a Limvala, which is like a $50 card.
Yeah.
But the base of it is actually pretty inexpensive, and like a lot of the stuff's been reprinted. So I'm gonna just go through like Wooded Foothills, Khans Fetches. Khans Fetches are at their all-time low right now, and you can live without Arid Mesa, so you can pick up the 8 Khans Fetches.
Right. I think we both only played one of Arid Mesa too, right? Like you don't need it. It's just good for your fixing.
You have the Shocklands. Shocklands are fairly cheap as well right now. Wall of Omens reprinted in Eternal Masters. Eldritch Evolution's really cheap right now.
It's like a $5 card
because it's not even being used in Standard right now. Chord of Calling was in M15. That wasn't too far away ago. Birds of Paradise reprinted in Conspiracy 2, so there should be a lot of copies running around in the market to pick up. Eternal Witness, reprinted in Commander 2015. So there's a lot of stuff that was like reprinted, or it's just in general cheap, and you can cut stuff like Horizon Canopy. You get a cheaper version of Kiki. I have the Champions one, so it's like a few bucks more.
The ones with the dragon art, of course, because it's the best art.
So like you could make some cuts. Scavenging Ooze is fairly affordable too.
You have a lot of cards that are in the like $5 to $10 range, but they don't really break your wallet with things that cost a ton of money.
And you can use them in other decks.
Exactly, yeah.
So I think I'll post, when we get this set up, I'll post a budget version of this deck list, and I'll post my version of the deck list. So
if you're also interested in getting into Abzan Company, they're super close too. Like I'm like
they do
$200 or $300 away from Abzan Company, and that's like a pretty expensive deck. So.
And I play Abzan Company. I play both decks.
Yeah.
And one day we'll talk about Abzan Company. We'll have another guest around. So our podcast is running a little bit long, but we'll talk about our second deck. The second deck that I hinted at earlier this podcast will be our second podcast. It is our preview, and I'll preview it later. But first, we're going to do a little outro. We're going to talk a little bit. Our outro is going to be some F&M stories that we have, or some stories outside of Magic that we just have. It's a nice little closer. And then I'll tell you what our mystery deck is. So I'll start first. Mine's not an F&M story, but recently I do a lot of brewing. I have so many decks on my tap page. It's crazy. And what I've been trying to build is a modern version of Red-Green Colossus, the standard card. That it has super affinity for artifacts. It for every non-creature. Let me pull it up. It's something that if you're playing Kaladesh, you'll know about. It is 11 mana, 10/10. Metalwork Colossus costs X less to cast, where X is the total number of converted mana costs of non-creature artifacts you control. Sacrifice 2 artifacts, return Metalwork Colossus from your graveyard to your hand. So it has a lot of synergies with Sanctabugan. So you play it, and you can search this up and get another Metalwork Colossus. So you can just dump out 10/10s. You in Modern you get cards like Sylvan Scrying, Ancient Stirrings, and you get 2 Trilands, kind of Trilands. So there are Carpathian Forests and Grove of the Burn Willows, and they tap for colorless and tap for red and green. So you can have something like Thought Knot Seer and Matter Reshaper to sort of bridge in the mid game. You can also have stuff like what's the card? Oh, Gruul Signet. You can play with Signets, and it's super good because the Signet itself can tap. It's 2, and then it can add red into green. So you could just accelerate into Red-Green Colossus. I think. Oh, I don't want to post too many deck lists. This will be this will be the last deck list. There will be 3 deck lists in this. My little brew, and the 2 Kiki chords. But yeah. So something like Hedron Archive is super good because it's a 4 cost. So reduces Metalwork Colossus for 4, and it can tap 2 mana, so that's 6. So now your Metalwork Colossus is a 5 mana 10/10, and then if you don't need your Hedron Archive, you can sack it, draw 2 cards. So, Cole, do you have any stories you want to share?
I got a bad beats story. So we play Commander on Wednesdays, right? My deck that I play is Marin of Clan Neltoth. It's a black-green kind of value reanimator sort of deck. One of my main conditions is the Ashnod's Altar with Nim Deathmantle and some kind of token generator. Basically, Ashnod's Altar is an artifact, sack a creature to add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. Nim Deathmantle is an equipment. You can equip for 4, or if a creature you control dies, you can pay 4 and return the creature from the graveyard to the battlefield attached to Nim Deathmantle, or with Nim Deathmantle attached to it. So what you do basically is, if you have any creature that creates 3 bodies when it enters the battlefield, you can create an infinite loop where you create infinite colorless mana and infinite tokens of whatever you sack. So I had the win in my hand because the turn previous I reanimated Sidisi Grand Vizier twice or 3 times, something like that, something crazy. Everyone was complaining that my turn was taking too long.
Thomas is disgusted by this right now.
and my friend is playing Narset tokens. So we're all on some pretty dirty stuff, right? And then I see him cast a polymorph. And I figure he's just polymorphing for value. Surely he's got value creatures. He just has one copy of Elesh Norn in his deck. And if Elesh Norn is in play, I can't combo off. So I lose the game to Elesh Norn beats. And I would just like to point out, the reason why this is a bad beat story is that this isn't the first time this has happened to me. I've been Elesh Norn out of the game with the combo in hand before.
And you just realized, oh dear. What about you, Thomas? Do you have any stories outside of Magic or anything like that you want to share?
I once made a brew and didn't go negative at a tournament.
Jeez, man. You're making us feel bad.
No, for a long time, and still kind of just on the back burner since Eldritch Moon came out. I really wanted to make Spirits a thing in Modern, but my favorite color combination is Esper, and I do not like Aether Vial. So Spirits, with the printing of Mausoleum Wanderer and Spell Queller and Rattle Chains, Spirits had the possibility of being a worse fish. Just kind of like a worse version of Merfolk if you used Aether Vial. However, I'm really against that card just because I don't want to play it. And so I've been trying for a long time to make Esper Spirits a deck in Modern, and it turns out that Spell Queller is a really good card. Having a 3-mana exile target spell that costs 4 or less, so you trade up in value with a flash 2/3 flying creature. It's bonkers. And I failed miserably, actually.
You failed miserably. I think you went like 50-50. We went to local PPTQ, and I got top 4.
Yeah.
I had a very unfortunate. That will be our next story for our next episode.
Yeah, I went 4-3 with the deck, but it turns out that Merfolk is a better version of Spirits. I ended up losing to Merfolk like twice.
So here's the thing though, Merfolk can play Geist of St. Trash, but they're stupid if they do it. But you can play Geist of St. Trash
with Flash because of Rattle Chains.
Yeah, exactly.
And in fact, that is how I beat Nahiri Jeskai.
This is a very strange deck, but it's something that's really cool. So tune in to next episode where we will be talking about Thomas's deck. Tezzerator is another in our series of awesome decks in Modern that you should play. So today we talked about Kiki Court, and tomorrow we'll talk about Tezzerator. So this is Hold Priority, signing off.